Started on today's presentation. My name is Lynn. I am a customer service rep here at WarmlyYours, and I am joined by one of our amazing technical experts, Scott.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a really great time talking about trying to set up a seamless collaboration between electricians and flooring contractors. And if you've done any work on a home, you know that working with contractors can be a little frustrating. And we're going to go through the steps on exactly, what each contractor will be needing to do so that you can have that installation go really flawlessly. If there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. If we don't see them right away, we'll definitely get to them by the end of the presentation, but you can definitely put those in the chat or in the question and answer section. So we're going to be talking again about that collaborative process, specifically how people are going to kind of need to work together to install a WarmlyYours system. So we're going to go over some of our WarmlyYours tools that we offer that are going to make the installation easier. We'll talk about prep for installation as well as actually installing the floor heating system and getting it fully set up. So the electrician is the first role in this job we're going to be talking about. And Scott, I know you personally work with and talk to a lot of electricians. So can you kind of tell me what they want to start with?
Yeah, the first thing they want to do is they want to get this electrical plan that comes with our SmartPlan. And the SmartPlan is where we show how to lay the product out for the installer. But this page is for the electrician to know what amp draw the system is going to be, how many circuit breakers they're going to need. It's going to tell them what kind of control has been chosen, and what type of ground fault protection it has. So all the information that the electrician needs is on this sheet. You'd be surprised how many electricians, as soon as they see floor heat, they immediately assume, okay, that's 240. Well, it is not 240, and most of the time it isn't 240, because 240 really isn't needed unless you're over 220 or 240 square feet. That's when you need to go to 240. Everything else we design in 120 because you don't need to use two spaces in that breaker box. You can just use one for 120. So it helps conserve space in the breaker box. So get this into the hands of the electrician as soon as you can, because it's going to let them know what kind of breaker they need to purchase. So when they go out there, they're ready, they have this information in front of them. And they are going to work with the installer, because on the installation plan, it shows on that plan where we assume that the thermostat's going to be. Well, that's important to the electrician because the electrician has to run power to that spot. So you can't say, okay, the thermostat's going to be placed over here, and then the electrician goes, well, I'm going to put power over here. It doesn't work that way. You want to make sure that those both line up. If they don't, then we either have to redraw the drawing or do something other than that to get around that. So it's also the electrician's responsibility to make sure that the system is installed per their local code. So some local codes require conduit in the walls. Some local codes don't require conduit in the walls for high voltage wire. Some require it for the sensor wire. Some of them don't require conduit for the sensor wire. So this is all the stuff the electrician is going to need to share with the flooring installer to make sure the power is where it needs to be, that it's the right amount of power, that they have the right breaker, that it is going to be put in per the plan. So that's why we're doing this today, is to show how these two trades have to work together. So it's very, very important to get that set up right at the very beginning.
Yes, and this is kind of looking at the electrical plan that you had talked about a little bit more in depth. So you can see that it gives the electrician a lot of really important information. And if you're a homeowner, I often say, if you have an electrician that's going to be doing this, hand them this sheet if they have any questions. And usually 9 times out of 10, it's going to answer whatever their concerns or questions are. It's going to give you, like you had said, the wattage, it's going to give the voltage, the breaker size that is needed to run the system, and a lot of other really great information that you can see here.
Yeah, so it tells them in the notes, all power leads need to go to the thermostat. Always test the product with a digital ohmmeter. You have to test the product with an ohmmeter. Also, the thermostat, it tells you what size box the thermostat goes in, how high the box normally is installed. Of course, that's per local code, so you're going to do that. And how the power lines, they're number four, just like we talked about, does it need conduit? Does it not need conduit? All that information. The service panel, it talks about that. It tells you the system electrical consumption. All that information is there. Get this sheet to the electrician before they go.
Absolutely. And this is our Pro Electrician checklist. And this is just another one of our handouts, our materials that you can give your electrician that's really going to help them feel confident going into that installation. So, Scott, can you kind of walk us through what this checklist includes?
Yeah, simply it's telling that a person what they're going to need. So they're going to need the electrical plan, they're going to need a control, and we need to have a sensor that is going to be installed. So what we've started to do now is every electrical roll comes with a sensor attached to it already, and there's one in the thermostat box. So if you have two rolls or two cables that you put in a floor and you have a thermostat, that's automatically going to give you three sensors. Okay, so you can install those three sensors if you want and run them up to the wall into the back of the but what plugs into the back of the thermostat is one of them. You don't wire all three thermostats to the thermostat. You run all three wires up to the back of the thermostat, ball the two that aren't being used up as spares and stick them in the back and hook one of them up to the thermostat. You're going to need a digital multimeter to do your testing, to making sure that the product is good. A mega ohmmeter, if you're doing electric floor heating, is optional, but it is required for snow melting jobs.
Yes.
Single gang box, conduit, if it's required, a junction box. When you have two or more heaters, it's hard to get all those leads up the wall to the back of the thermostat and connect all those wires to the back of the thermostat. Sometimes you'll put a junction box at the bottom of the wall, run all your mats there, and then run one single connector up to the back of the thermostat. So that's where this electrical plan and everything's going to come in handy. He sees if he has three rolls or three cables that have to hook up to a thermostat, he's going to say, I need to take a junction box because I'm going to put that junction box at the base of the wall. So he's going to verify the ohm readings. Very, very important. You'd be amazed how many times people are installing 120 volt heating system and it's just assumed that 240 is being sent to it. If you do that, the thermostat is not, a thermostat will not change 240 into 120. It's simply a switch, turns on and off, on and off. So if you send 240 into it, 240 will come out of it. So if you have a 120 volt system installed in your floor, you need to make sure that the power going to the thermostat is 120, not 240. So you'd be amazed how many people call up and go, yeah, I sent 240 volts to my 120 volt system and now it doesn't work. That's because it damaged it. You can't send 240 to 120. So we do have tools that allow you to find out where it blew apart, but that's what will happen if you send 240 to a 120 system. They're going to test it to make sure it does work. They're going to make sure that the electrical work, the rough-ins are all done ahead of time if they can. They're going to connect the one floor sensor to the back of the thermostat. They're going to write down the ohms readings, put that in the installation manual, give that to the customer and go, here's your record of a good installation. And the most important thing you have to remember, not only if you have multiple sensors that only one connects to the back of the thermostat,
Yes.
you can never ever put the sensor wire in the same conduit as the non-heating lead. They have to be in two different conduits because if you put them both in the same conduit, the high voltage running through that wire will obliterate the low voltage signal. And it's probably against the local code to do that too. You can't put a low voltage and a high voltage wire in the same conduit. So that's what the electrician is going to do. It gives them a simple list of here, check, 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 check. And that way they make sure that they have the tools they need and they've done the installation steps that they need to do.
Right. Absolutely. And this is kind of what we were talking about when we're actually talking about the wiring is the electrical infrastructure setup. This is what we mean when we talk about our rough-in kits or just kind of roughing in the electric as well as actually bringing the cables to the power. So can you kind of tell us, what this picture is really showing?
Yeah, it's showing the leads for the heating product being located there. Once again, we talked about at the very beginning, if the thermostat's over here, you need to make sure that the rolls or the mats start over here. You can't start them on the other side of the room and then try to get the leads back to this spot. So that has to be figured out before you even get started. So that's what it's going to do. Now, if you look in this picture, you see one conduit coming down. That's coming from the circuit breaker. Then you have two conduits going to the floor, one for the non-heating lead and one for the thermostat sensor. So local code may say, hey, you don't need one for the sensor, then that's cool. You don't need to use it. But otherwise, you know, in a place where they're really picky about their electrical code, like Chicago, the city that burned down, they're pretty concerned about their electric. So they're going to make the low voltage wire go in conduit too. But you don't run into that very often, but that's what the electrician is for. He's there to go, okay, here we need to do this, here we need to do this because this is what our code says. Okay, fine. We always say install it per your local code. We always quote the National Electric Code when we're talking about design parameters, but what it all comes down to is the local code supersedes the national code. So whatever the local code says is what goes. So make sure that is all set up, and that's why it's a good idea to get that electrical plan and the smart plan. Just make a copy of both of them and give them to the electrician. Then they can see, oh yeah, I see power's on that wall. That's where I need to put it. So that's the kind of collaboration that you want to have between the two pros.
Right. That's exactly what you're looking for to make the system super easy to install and make sure that it's all working properly. And then one of the last steps is integrating the system with the actual thermostat or control. So this is going to require, like you had said, Scott, wiring it up as well as utilizing or wiring the control or the sensor rather. So can you kind of tell us, you know, how that works with these thermostats, with our Inspire thermostats?
Yeah, it's very simple. The wires coming up from the floor, the non-heating lead has three parts. It has a ground and then two heating wires. Leads for those heating wires. So those are the three wires you need to make. So if you look on the back of the thermostat, there's 4 screws there. 2 at the bottom, 2 at the top, 2 at the bottom. One pair is to get the power in, and the other pair is to get the power out to the floor. So the thermostat needs to be wired correctly. So line 1 and line 2 is for 240, that would be line and line, 2 hots to the thermostat. And if you look in the back of the thermostat there's nowhere, we get this question all the time. How do I hook the ground from your floor heating system up to the thermostat? And the answer to that is you don't. You don't hook that up. You hook the ground from the floor heater up to the ground coming from the circuit breaker. Those two connect to each other away from the thermostat. So the thermostat doesn't have a ground connection. So there's 2 wires to get the power in, 2 wires to get the power out, and then you make your ground connection elsewhere in the box. So that's how you connect that thermostat. Then, if you look on the front of the base, the thermostat comes with 2 pieces. That's another thing that a lot of people don't realize. Hey, can I buy just the faceplate? I just want the faceplate. Can't do that. Hey, can I buy just the base? I just need the base of this. Can't do that. We don't get them separate. You get them together. So a thermostat is the faceplate and the base. So on the right side of that picture at the top is you can see the back of the base. Then on the left side, you can see the faceplate. Those two clamp together. So that's what you're going to have there. So when I talk, the reason why I'm going into all that minutia here is because we need to worry about the next connection on the front of the base. So when you take the faceplate off and that base is sticking in the wall, you're looking at what's there. You can see what we call the front of the base. There's a screw at the bottom and a screw at the top. That's what holds it into the box. Then you take your faceplate and you put it on and take it off like that. Well, this part sitting in that box is called the base. And on that is where our connections for the sensor go. So if you look at the top picture there, there's no place for that sensor to screw in there. It actually goes on the front of that base and it goes in screws C and D. And you should test that sensor also because it should test between 8,000 and 18,000 ohms with a digital ohmmeter. So there's a way to test that to make sure it's good. If you're ever troubleshooting your floor sensor, the easiest way to do is to get a digital ohmmeter, set it to the 20K range, which is 20,000, and then test the sensor wire. And it should be between 8,000 and 18,000, depending on the temperature. As the temperature changes, the numbers change. So that's how you know if the sensor that you've installed is good. So that's a troubleshooting tip for you after the fact.
Yes, definitely good to know. And one of the last things the electrician will be doing is that final system testing. So again, we had talked about it a few times. We'll probably say it again. Make sure that you're testing the system with an ohm meter at every step of the installation. So before you start it, at some points during it, as well as after. And you also want to make sure that they are doing a final test of electrical connections once that flooring has been fully installed and that process is done.
Right.
And
So
I
if you're,
think,
yeah, if you're
go ahead.
planning on if you're planning on doing an installation, you have to have a digital ohm meter. And these are available at any big box store. They're $20 or less. And this one that's on the picture right here, that was $19.99. And it has a knob on the front that you can select individual ranges of the ohms. Self-ranging meters and the old analog meters with the needle on the front, both of those are very hard to use with electric floor heating. You want to buy an inexpensive meter that allows you to choose 200 ohms, 2000 ohms, 20K ohms, 200 M. You want that knob because that puts you right where you need to be testing. Because a lot of times with a self-ranging meter, you'll have success testing the floor heating product, but when you attach it to the floor sensor, it won't see anything because it's still looking down in the 200 range, and you're supposed to be testing in the 220,000 range. So it's not so automatic. And sometimes we get calls, hey, my floor tests well, but I'm testing my sensor now and I don't get anything. That's because they have a self-ranging meter that's stuck at the lower thing. So I have to press the range button, range, to get it to the right place. With this, you set it, do your measurement, set it, do your measurement, and turn it off. You're good to go.
Awesome. We also recommend providing the installation manual for our products and the thermostat installation and operating instructions to both make sure that the homeowner has a copy, and you'll also want to make sure that the electrician and the flooring installer have access to those documents as well, so that we can make sure that the installation goes smoothly.
Yeah, the floor heating product has 2 or 3 labels on it that tells you what voltage it is, what the ohms are supposed to be.
Yes.
So when you're testing for ohms, you're not just testing for the number that's on the label. You're also testing from red to ground and from black to ground, or from yellow to ground and black to ground, to make sure that there's no shorts. That's how you test for shorts. So the number on the label will say 55 ohms. That's across red and black, or 55 ohms across yellow and black. So that's your first test. But really, there's 3 tests you have to do every step of the way. Yellow to black, yellow to ground, black to ground, every single time. And what you're going to do is you're going to take those labels off and you're going to put them in the manual, or you're going to take them off and stick them by the breaker panel, because that way you can put them on the breaker panel and write roll 1 or breaker 2, breaker 3, whatever that is. That way you know what's installed in the floor, because those are sticky. You either stick them into the manual and give it to the customer with the final number written down, or you put them on the breaker panel or next to the breaker panel.
Wonderful information. Thank you. So kind of moving on to the flooring installer, and I know you've done a lot of this work as well. So you're very well versed in what the flooring installer is actually doing on site. So one of the first things that the flooring installer often does is measuring, correct?
Right. The thing you have to do is, when you get this plan from us, we all know that when you're doing new construction, dimensions change. We started out with a 50-inch tub. We want to go to a 65-inch tub. Well, if they don't measure that, they've come out here and we have a measurement for a 50-inch tub, but they've taken that out and put a 50-inch tub in, it's taken away floor space because it takes up more room. So when you start taking floor space away, you start taking space that you were heating. So all of a sudden now, the product that we had installed with that 50-inch tub is now too much. It won't fit because the 60-inch tub is coming out, 10 inches, further, which eliminates one of those runs. So now all of a sudden I've got too much product. What do I do? Can I cut it? No, you can never, ever cut it. That's why you have to go over and field measure your dimensions and make sure that the dimensions are in the room are the same as the one on the plan. Because if it's a new construction, there's a pretty good chance that those dimensions have changed, but no one told us. So we gave you the old drawing with the old dimensions, and now you have new dimensions that are wrong. You may not have enough product to heat it, or you may have too much. Can't cut it. So you need to verify your dimensions and make sure that all those dimensions are correct. So when you're doing this, notice how we don't go under the vanity and we don't go under the tub itself. That's because you can't put electric floor heat under a permanent fixture. So you never ever put it under a vanity. You go into the toe kick of the vanity, but you never go under, because what happens is most vanities have a boxed in bottom. And if you have heat under there, it gets trapped and it overheats. So there's a couple rules, but the National Electric Code says you can't do it, so don't do it anyway. So that's one of those things. And also on that toilet, make sure that the heating wire stays at least 4 inches away from the wax ring. Because if it doesn't stay 4 inches from the wax ring, you're going to have a nice surprise after the people move in and after they start using the floor heat. And now all of a sudden that little room gets no good.
And absolutely. And I think the other thing that we didn't really touch on, but I'll mention briefly, is really the installation kind of steps. So often, if you're going over a concrete subfloor, we recommend that you get an insulating underlayment. If you're going over a wood subfloor, it usually isn't necessary, but obviously every situation, every house, every customer varies. And you also want to make sure that you're preparing the subfloor properly so that that heat is efficient, that the heating system is installed safely, and that that flooring goes down very easily.
Yeah, a bathroom on the second floor located over the kitchen is going to start with a much warmer floor than somebody that lives in Alaska or somebody that lives in the Yukon on a concrete slab. That second floor bathroom is going to be 75 degrees or 80 degrees to start with. It doesn't have that far to go with the electric heat to get it warmer. But if you put electric heating cable on a concrete slab, doesn't matter if it's 20 below or if it's 50 degrees, it's still going to pull the heat down. So we get lots of calls, especially over the summer. The people have put in a new system or they built a new house, they put it on a slab. And we've told them, it's like, it would be a really good idea for you to buy the thermal sheet to keep that wire off of the slab so it goes up, not down. And they go, no, we're in California. We shouldn't have any trouble with that. We'll get a call from them in the fall, the first time they turn it on. And they'll say, my floor has taken 20 hours to heat up, or my floor is only getting up to 74. Well, we can look right on the order and know why, because it's on a concrete slab. This concrete slab is pulling all the heat downward. So there's a big difference between a second story bathroom over a kitchen and one that's on a concrete slab. It's a big difference. That's why one floor requires the thermal sheet and one doesn't.
Definitely. Yes. That is good to know. So looking at this smart plan, this is what you would be handing to a flooring installer. And if you are the flooring installer, this is what you're going to get back when you request a quote. So you can actually see on here basically every step of that installation. We'll show you where to start and end the mat, as you can see in the key down here. And then we also have a few different ways that the cables, or the mats rather, can be cut and turned. So can you kind of tell us, Scott, what these pop-out drawings are?
Yeah, well, first of all, the T in the circle there in the center at the bottom of the drawing, that's where the
Yes.
thermostat is. That's why it's so important for us to know where that is so we get the product starting in the correct area. The thing is, it doesn't have to be right next to the T, because you can see that triangle on roll number 1. And we know it's roll number 1 because it's a circle with a number 1 in it, located by a triangle. Excuse me. Those things show the start of the mat. So the start of the mat is there. It's not right by the thermostat, but the lead is 15 feet. So you've got plenty of lead to get across that wall and then up to where the thermostat is. And then it runs up 7 feet, 6 inches, and then it turns, you cut the mesh. You never ever cut the cable, and you cut the mesh, and then you flip it around and you roll it back down this direction. And then you do a cut and turn at 7 feet 3 and back and forth that way. What we've shown here with the T in the circle is that there's also a dotted line that runs out into the green part of that mat. And that is a call out there that you talked about. You can see that's where the sensor goes. So the sensor is being shown, it's going through an open loop. It's not going across a heating wire, it's going into an open loop. So it's going into a loop and not touching the wire. You never have it run over the wire. That would be very, very bad. And then that call out to the left is actually showing you where that is what we call a free form area. And that's where you actually take the wire off of the mesh and hot glue it down on the floor in that pattern to get you from one area over to the other area. So that's one thing that you want to look out for there. And then it works its way back there into the toilet room. And then that rectangle is the spot where it stops. So that's the kind of thing that you're going to be looking for. You're going to be looking for the amount of like that 12 in that box down there on the left side of the drawing right below the 54. That tells you we're going to be using 12 inches of that wire to do that part. So, and then if you look there where you see the word vanity, you see that there is a 6-inch mark there. That's pointing to the freeform area there between the main bathroom and the toilet room. And you're going to be using 6 inches of mesh there. 6 inches of mesh is actually 2 runs of wire, 18 inches and 18 inches. And that's going to be your freeform that gets glued down and put into that room. So those are the things you want to look for. In the lower right corner, you'll see that the size of the roll is called out there because it's 1 in a circle. It's a 1.5 by 46 foot. If there was a second and a third roll, it would have a number 2 and a number 3, and it would tell you what sizes those were. So that's where you see what size it is. In the center where it shows operating costs, it'll tell you how much it costs to operate per hour. It'll tell you what breaker size is needed. It'll tell you what amperage you're going to be using and how many watts that you're going to be using. All that information is going to be there. That's going to be good information for you to have an idea how much power it actually uses when it's on.
Yes, absolutely. So looking at the actual installation when the flooring installer, I keep wanting to say flooring instructor, so if I slip that up, just yell at me.
Okay.
But the flooring installer is going to want to make sure that, first of all, that they have all the product. We always recommend taking everything out of the box, testing the system before actually beginning the install, and then also utilizing our circuit check. So can you kind of tell us, Scott, first thing, the electrician or the flooring installer rather walks in and is going to begin the installation soon. What should they be doing?
Well, the people that ordered the product, just like you said, are going to test it the day they get it. Because if there's something wrong with any of this stuff the day you get it, let us know. We can get you out the product that is good. Because the last thing you want to do is install something that doesn't work. And I was like, okay, well, we don't know if this works or not. We're just going to go and install it under this, 3/4 inch marble floor. And all of a sudden find out, oops, we forgot to test it. It doesn't work. That's the last thing you want to do. You'd never, ever want to be in that situation. So test it the day you get it. Then when you're ready to start your installation on that day, test it, make sure everything is still good. And then once you're testing it, make sure it's good, that first test of the day, you take that circuit check and you put the circuit check on the lead and then lay the product out on the floor. Before you start covering the floor with thinset, you take the circuit check off, test it with a digital ohmmeter again, because the number you get now should match the beginning number that you had at the very start. Then if it does, you put the circuit check back on, and then you can start tiling the floor.
Exactly. And I don't know if we touched exactly on what the circuit check is. Essentially, this is going to be hooked up to the mat or the cable during the install, more or less like you had said, for the entire time, so that if anything should go wrong, any shorts or anything happens, we're able to fix that before anything permanent goes down on top of it.
Yeah, circuit check, there are 3 wires like we talked about in the beginning. There are 3 little wires in that cable assembly. 2 of the wires are the heating wires, that's the heating circuit, then the ground. So what the circuit check does is it makes sure that you have a complete circuit here. So it's testing the heating circuit to make sure it's intact. And then it's also telling you that you don't have a short between the ground and either one of those. So it tells you if you create an open circuit, and it also tells you if you create a short circuit. So those are the two things that it will tell you.
And one more thing on the circuit check, it's very small, so I think we often don't talk about it very much. But we often usually recommend, I'd say for most projects, that every single mat and, if you're doing cable, something like that, every item that you're using that is going to, be installed, have a circuit check on it during the installation process, just to ensure that there isn't any damage anywhere in the space.
Yeah, and if it starts going off on you during your installation, there's a chance that the batteries just might be wearing out too. So if that's the case, if it don't panic all of a sudden if it starts
Yes.
screaming at you because it's sending power throughout the entire circuit. So at a certain point, the batteries will die, especially we hear this from people that put the floor in, they leave the circuit check on, they come back the next day and it's alarming. It's making a screaming sound because it's just about ready to die. So that's the kind of cases where take a step back, take the batteries out, put new fresh batteries in and do it and see if if that alarm goes away. A lot of the times it will.
Yes, definitely. So the actual responsibilities of the flooring installer, I think people often get a little confused, especially homeowners when they're trying to find a contractor on what the flooring installer will specifically be doing and what the electrician should be doing. And again, we had kind of talked about collaborating. You do want them to be in contact ideally so that you can make sure that everything is, going according to plan and that each of those contractors are working on what they need to be focused on. Can you kind of tell us, Scott, a little bit about the warranty that we have on our floor heating products?
Yeah, the warranty is what you want to, that's why we're going over these readings because you want to either write this down in your installation manual. If you buy it directly from us, we are going to have your order information in the system already, but we won't have your own readings that you have. So that's why you write it down in the installation manual, or you can go online. And when you go online, you just put in the part number of the heating element and you put down what room it was in and what the flooring surface was. Then your own readings that we talked about, the three of them, the very beginning, the one in the middle, and then the one at the end. And the reason why these are so important is because let's say that you install this product and it's installed, your one reading, two readings, and three readings are good. Then a week later, somebody comes in to put the trim in the bathroom, or they come in to clean the grout lines. And now all of a sudden, your numbers that were good on the day you installed it are no longer any good after that trade pro left. So something happened between the bad readings and the good readings you got after it was installed. Well, whoever had their hands in there last probably caused the problem. People that instead of putting the trim nail in sideways like this, do it like this. And if the cable's running along the edge of the floor back to the thermostat, the trim nail will hit it. If you are cleaning your grout lines and you're using a really sharp blade and you go too deep, you actually cut into the floor. I had to travel to Pittsburgh about 10 years ago and fix 3 or 4 spots where they use the same long cable, and it went from one room into the other room and it got nicked in both rooms. So we had to fix that because they got in there too deep when they were cleaning the grout lines out. That's why it's so important to go, my readings were good until Joe, the trim guy,
Yes.
came in, or Sheila, the lady that cleans the grout lines for them. After she left, we have a problem. That's why these numbers are so important.
Yes, absolutely. And something kind of that you kind of touched on, if there are other contractors that will be coming in and working in the room, either before, during, or after the floor heating is installed, we definitely recommend chatting with them and letting them know, kind of how to be careful with it, especially if it's someone like a grout cleaner or someone doing the trim. Like you said, that's where we see it happen a lot. So you just want to make sure that they're fully aware of, the correct way to be careful around these products.
Yeah, those people, they don't know unless you tell them that there's electric floor heating under that tile. It's going to be they're going to treat it like every other floor they've done today or yesterday or the day before. They're just going to clean, clean, clean and not even think about it. So that's going to be part of the responsibility of the homeowners to go, listen, okay, there's electric floor heating under here. Please be careful when you're cleaning the grout lines, or talking to the trim people when they come in, or when they're putting transitions in. You'd be amazed at the number of people that have a problem with their floor after the person comes in and puts the transition in the doorway
Yes.
because they got too close to that's why if you look at our plans, we never go into the doorway because we don't know where the transition is going to go in that doorway. So we don't want the screws for that transition to go through the heating wire.
Exactly. Exactly. So when the flooring installer is there, kind of looking at the project, this is again what you want to make sure that they have so that everything is just in one place. So again, Scott, this is kind of your area of expertise. Can you kind of walk us through these different tools that are required for a flooring install?
Yeah, these tools are not specialist tools. You don't have to go out and buy, like if you're going to start working on model rockets, you have to have all the parts that you need to work on model rockets. Or if you're going to be working on this specific product, you want to make sure that you have all the little tools that, like if you're a watchmaker, you have to make sure that you have 10,000 tools that you need to be a watchmaker. This product is installed with common stuff that you have around the house. It requires scissors, staples, staple guns. You may have to go get a staple gun. You may have to get a glue gun. I can tell you probably all you have to do is ask your neighbor for either one of those, and they'll probably have them. We're not looking for you to go out and do a huge cash outlay to be a specialist on this. You don't need it. But you need to make sure that it's handy. You can get these things anywhere if you do need them. You're going to need to make sure that you have, I mean, that's why we put this list here. Do I have the heating rolls I need? Do they match what's on the plan? Do I have the thermostat sensors? I want to make sure I have the plan. The thing is that people buy our product online. A lot of times, all you need to do is if you want to buy the product online, send us the dimensions of your room and what you bought, and we'll show you how to install it in your room. That plan will be free of charge. You don't have to pay for it, but we'll show you how it goes in there. That way there's nothing worse. The people that I talk to with the most angst are the ones who are buying it for the first time and they're trying to figure out what size product do I need to put in here? What kind of amperage is it going to be? What kind of breaker do I need? And I just tell them, send us a sketch of your room. We'll tell you all that stuff so you don't have to figure it out. If you've never installed floor heating, you're not an expert. You've never done it. So you don't know. So let people that do these drawings every day, 20 or 30 times a day, let them do it for you. They know how to lay it out. They know how it best fits in your space. Don't try to figure out something you've never done before. Let somebody else say, here's what you need, and here's how you put it in. Here's a video that shows you how to do it, and then go. Get it done, because you don't need all these special tools. You're just going to need the scissors, the staple gun, duct tape. You're going to need modified thin set. You're going to need trowels. Obviously, if you're doing a tile floor, you're going to need trowels, but the trowels aren't required because you're putting floor heat in it. They're just simply there because you're putting tile down. So it's not something that you have to do a lot of. If you look here, one of the things that's mentioned is self-leveling cement. Self-leveling cement is a great product to work with because it makes you just put the system down and pour the self-leveling over it. It gives you a nice flat surface that you can tile onto. But the thing is, the number one mistake I see with people that are putting this product in and covering it with self-leveling is they don't attach it to the floor well enough.
Yeah.
And if you don't attach the floor heating product to the floor well enough, when you pour self-leveling over it, the stuff will float to the top. And that's the last thing you want to do, because then you're going to have to come in and float more on top of it. So this stuff has to be held down, and that's where your hot glue gun is going to come in handy. It's where your staple gun is going to come in handy. And once again, if you're stapling through the mesh of our roll
Not the
product.
cable.
Never, ever staple over the cable, because if you do that, you're going to have multiple failures in your floor. We talk to people every winter who've done that, and they say, well, I think there's a staple on that spot. Well, that's why that spot's failed. Then they go, well, I've used like 6 dozen other staples. Well, that's a problem.
And I get it. It's tempting. It looks like it would fit right over the cable, but it's gonna hurt it. Just trust us. Only
Yeah.
staple the mesh, please.
Yeah, staple only the mesh. And if you don't attach it very well to the floor, it's going to float to the top. And we talk to people all winter long that have done that.
Oh
So
yes.
there's a couple things there. So make sure that you have that. Make sure you have your electrical box and make sure you talk to your electrician. They're going to get you your conduit. The most important thing is here, if you're going to talk to somebody about putting floor heat in, is go to their breaker box and see if they have space in their breaker panel
Right.
for another breaker. That's very important because if you don't have another breaker to use, you're not going to be able to put the floor heat in.
Absolutely. So just checking to see if we have any questions. I think we got one sent in ahead of time, correct, Scott?
Yes, we did.
You able to pull that up for
I
me?
am. No
And I
charge.
see in the chat there was a question about receiving attendance certificates, and Olivia will take care of that. So she will get that all sent over, which is
So
why
this
she is
person,
great.
yeah, Carol H. Asked this question. I'm interested in the electric type of warm floor. Can it be used under a cork floor? Well, um, there's a couple things about cork flooring. Cork is what we used to suggest to put over a concrete slab before you put the heating wire down. Um, so it was an insulator. We used to use it for insulation purposes until we found thermal sheet, which has got double the R value. Um, so that's what we use now. And you can't use cork with self-leveling as an underlayment. So Carol asks a great question. I want to use a cork floor. Well, cork is an insulator, right? That's what we've used it for historically. But the thing is, these cork floors don't have a real thick layer to them sometimes of that actual cork. So what the rule is, if it's cork or if it's any other type of flooring that's going over the top, as long as the R value of that flooring is 1 or less, it's fine. It doesn't matter if it's cork or if it's LVT or if it's laminate or whatever it is. As long as the R value is less than 1, then you can use it with electric floor heat. So I hope that explains why, but why as soon as you say the word cork, it gets kind of scary because if it was really thick cork, it may trap the heat and not let it get up to the floor level. So the rule always to follow, no matter what the flooring is R value 1 or less.
Fabulous. Thank you. And I'm not seeing any other questions. If anything comes up while we are doing some housekeeping, feel free to pop it in the chat. But we are going to be doing our next webinar on Thursday, October 10th, right here on Zoom at 1 o'clock Central Time. And this webinar will be focused on smart flooring choices for energy efficient radiant heating. So if you liked Scott's last answer, you're going to get a lot more of that talking a lot about actual flooring choices and flooring types and the different options available next month. And we also do offer additional training. We have live streams on Zoom at 4 o'clock on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, hosted by usually either me or Scott. So feel free to pop on in. They're usually relatively short, and we'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. And we also are offering a 25% promotion for some of our towel warmers. So be sure to check out the website to see exactly which ones are getting that sale and see what different options we have available for you. And once this is over, we will be sending out an email asking for some feedback on today's webinar. We'd love to get comments, suggestions, especially compliments. We really will take any compliments. But we also would love to know any topics that you'd like to hear about in upcoming webinars. Be sure to let us know so that we are doing exactly, we want to give you the webinars that you want, that you need, and that you're looking for. So I think that that is all that we have for now. So I think we are good. Thank you everybody so much for joining us. Again, my name is Lynn here for Warmly Yours, and I am joined by the fabulous, talented Scott,
Thanks
and
for
we are
watching,
going to head
everybody.
out. Thanks so much.